Started. Welcome everyone to Washington Multifamily Housing Association's 6 Feet Apart webinar series. I am Sloan Sorbana. I'm the Director of Career Development at your association. I have on with me today Brett Waller, our Director of Government Affairs. A couple of our other team members are logged in as well, and we just want to thank you for making time to join us today. Like every single one of you, a few weeks ago, our roles really changed and shifted, and we had to pivot quickly to find new ways to do our work. And our number one responsibility is keeping you, our members, informed and updated. And that's how 6 Feet Apart kind of came to be. We want to keep you informed and motivated and connected from a safe distance. And so that's where we are. So today we are going to be talking about basically COVID-19, a number of emergency orders, mandates, and even laws that have been enacted during this kind of worldwide pandemic. And so Brett's going to be taking us through that information. But with that, that is kind of all of the housekeeping tips. I'm getting ready to go ahead and hand this over to my partner, Brett. As I do so, I'm going to launch our first poll. You will see that we're going to do a number of polls today. This is just a way for you to engage with us and tell us how you're feeling and what you're thinking about different things. So I'm going to do our icebreaker poll while I hand this over to Brett. Take it away, and I'll share these results in just a couple minutes.
Well, thanks, Sloan. Appreciate it. It's fun to work with you virtually all of a sudden, but it's not the same sharing a wall. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. I'm hoping we can make today's webinar short, but provide you with the needed information that you are looking for yourself and for your residents through this crazy time that we are living in. It wouldn't be a webinar without more polls. So we're going to jump from our first poll. I'll kick it back to Sloan real quick, and she can tell us who's most likely to interrupt us today. I would say. So
we had 21 of our participants answer, and it looks like pets are our number one interrupters today. Although a good chunk of our people are essential, well, you're all essential, and they're actually at work today. So probably a resident or a coworker is going to be interrupting their webinar today.
You know, if you saw our video on Instagram or Facebook yesterday, you'd know I have 2 dogs, and they're currently asleep on the bed. So here's hoping they don't wake. They always say, let sleeping dogs lie.
Okay, so I'm going to turn that one off. And then do we want the next poll?
Yeah, let's jump right into the next poll.
Okay. All right, this poll is really around kind of how you're feeling and how you're dealing with the COVID crisis right now. So we've gone ahead and launched it. There's 3 questions to this poll, so feel free to answer all 3 questions. All right, we're going to end that poll. And Brett, do you want me to share those results?
Yeah, we can share them. Yeah, I mean, folks feel somewhat informed, but it seems the directives are changing constantly, and you are so correct about that. Things change every day. It seems like I wake up in the morning and there's another order from the governor or different information coming from the CDC, coming from Congress. Information is changing rapidly, and everyone, I think, is just trying to keep up. Most of our attendees today are in King County, with a few smattered throughout the rest of the region: Kitsap, Snohomish, and Pierce, and also Spokane. And then finally, most folks are getting their information either from the news, their company, or WMFHA. That's great to hear that you're getting your information from WMFHA. We're excited about that. I'm going to cover the different eviction moratorium, things you can do, resources you can provide, and policies you can offer, and we'll end with some Q&A. So please don't forget to click that Q&A button on the bottom of your screen and ask your question. We'll try and get to all your questions at the end of the presentation today. Resources. You know, we're very appreciative that so many of you are looking to WMFHA for resources, and we're trying to provide you with the most up-to-date information on a daily basis to make sure that you have the correct information for your residents, for your teams, and your companies overall, so that you know exactly what is happening and how you can continue to operate in this unprecedented time. We've really got 2 types of resources on our website. And if you navigate on the WMFHA homepage, which you're seeing a photo of right now, and mouse over the resources tab, you'll see there are 2 types of resources. First is COVID-19. That's going to be a summary of all of our blogs, all the information that we've posted, emailed to you. You can find that quickly and easily just by clicking on that link. The second is rental assistance. This is an entire webpage of rental assistance resources for specific counties in Washington State. We continue to add more rental assistance resources that we become aware of on a weekly basis, and we're adding more counties as well. Right now, I believe we have 7 counties on the website and are trying to add more resources on a weekly basis. If you've looked at that website and we don't have resources for you that are available, or if you know of more resources that might be available in your region, please let us know. You can email me at Brett with 2 T's at WMFHA.org, and we can either research or add the information to that page. We're constantly updating it and really trying to make it a comprehensive list of resources that are available to you to provide to your residents as well. Like I've said, this is an unprecedented time in the history of our country and one in which no one has experienced before. This pandemic is something that we are all learning about each day, and each new turn presents new challenges for the public and elected officials who are working to minimize the spread of the virus and support our economy. This, in fact, is testing all of us. We know the impact of this crisis is affecting small companies and large companies, individuals who just entered the workforce, and those who are veterans of their industry. For those of us in multifamily, the biggest concern we have coming up is the collection of rent and the payment of the bills. Typically, in an otherwise normal world, rent is due on the first of the month and it's considered late thereafter. There are various mechanisms available to housing providers to compel the payment of rent, late fees, a formal notice, and eviction proceedings. But this pandemic and the resulting economic crisis has upended these normal processes. Jurisdictions large and small have enacted eviction moratorium. Some prevent the accrual of late fees and prohibit the service of a notice to pay or vacate. Others go further to prohibit any type of an eviction at all. Looking at each of these eviction moratorium, let me describe the parameters, some of their parameters. So the first is a federal eviction moratorium. This eviction moratorium was passed in the CARES Act, which was the third supplemental coronavirus package that was passed last week. You probably saw some information about it. It was a $2.2 trillion supplemental package. This federal eviction moratorium applies to all non-payment of rent cases in any HUD-funded properties. This includes LIHTC properties, Section 8 tenancies, HUD-funded mortgages, so enterprise-backed Fannie and Freddie mortgages, housing that's covered under the Violence Against Women's Act, rural housing, and more. In addition, in all of these types of housing programs, housing providers are prohibited from accruing late fees. The state of Washington also has an eviction moratorium, and it applies only to the initiation, service and initiation of any non-payment of rent case for all properties in Washington. And it also prohibits the service of a 20-day notice unless the housing provider can attest to the facts that support actions threatening the health and safety of other tenants and other individuals. So you can't just serve a 20-day notice. Right now, you need to, if you do have to serve a 20-day notice for a reason, you're going to have to complete a declaration and describe the facts by which you're serving that 20-day notice. We strongly recommend that if you are looking to serve a 20-day notice right now, that you consult with your attorneys and make sure that what you're doing is appropriate within the law and making sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. The state moratorium does not prevent the accrual of late fees. However, many local jurisdictions have enacted jurisdictional moratoriums that do prohibit the accrual of late fees. So there are many jurisdictions across the state, from Seattle and Burien, Everett in the north, Spokane in the east, and Issaquah, Woodinville, Auburn, and more. We have a complete list of each of the eviction moratorium and a summary that we've included in a link in the chat box for you to download as well. I think what's most important and what you're really trying to think about is what comes next here. When will these eviction moratorium expire? And unfortunately, we don't have one simple answer for you. They're all going to expire at different times. You can see in the next slide here, this is the length of time that all eviction moratorium are currently set to expire, with one caveat. The King County Superior Court, which you're going to see at the bottom as KCSC, is supposed to expire yesterday. They sent a notice out yesterday afternoon that said that all unlawful detainer proceedings, all of them, regardless of the type of proceeding, are suspended indefinitely. So this obviously was made before this slide was made before that, but you can see they just vary in their length of time across the board. I would expect that some, if not most, you'll see that most of them expire in the middle part of April. We should expect that many of them will be extended for at least another month. We've also, of course, got the Stay Home and Stay Healthy order. This is the order from Governor Inslee that prohibits all people in Washington from leaving their homes or participating in social, spiritual, and other recreational gatherings. This is the order that's causing your residents to come to your office and complain about the gym being closed and some of the common areas being closed. And our best recommendation is to just guide them back to this order, the public health guidelines around social gatherings and places where you frequently come in contact with people. Just imagine, I'm sure you've all been to the grocery store. Just imagine if the X's weren't on the floor at the grocery store right now, you could all be standing very closely, and that's exactly the same thing that's happening at the gym with the machines that are very close together. And so we just need to make sure and reaffirm as we're speaking with our residents and others that we're practicing those social distancing tactics so that we can minimize the spread of this virus.
Hey, Brett, I'm just going to jump in with two questions that have come in that I just want to go ahead and take care of now. Yep. One is, who is in Section 8? Does this mean all properties?
So the law actually says that all properties that participate in Section 8. We've been asking a lot of questions about this because obviously the state of Washington has source of income discrimination as part of its law. So does that mean that every property in Washington is subject to a 120-day moratorium? And the answers that we've been given so far have been, no, it only applies to those tenancies where there's actually a tenant with a Section 8 voucher currently residing in the property. So it would be, and it would affect those specific tenants only, similar to MFTE program if you operate in Seattle or another jurisdiction with the MFTE program, and other very specific programs related to individual tenants.
Okay, and then the last one is, where can we find a list of the eviction moratorium specifics by municipality? I'm assuming it's that slide you used that showed the different expirations.
It's in the chat box, and we're going to send these resources out after this presentation as well, so that all folks who attended today get a copy of the presentation and the different resources that we're also providing.
Yes, and just as, I don't think I said this in the housekeeping, but this webinar is being recorded, and we will be posting a link to this webinar on our resources page so that you could watch it after the fact or share it with another member that might need this information.
Starting back in on the Stay Home, Stay Healthy order, this order also includes a 14-page list of what we call essential critical infrastructure workers. This is everywhere from those managing nuclear power plants to water facilities, construction, all sorts of different industries that are deemed to be critical for the continued operation of our country and our city and our state during this crisis. Unfortunately, the order does not specifically reference property management. It references a few different things, and we'll go through those now. So the underlying order includes workers to ensure continuity of building functions, security staff to maintain building access control and physical security measures, construction workers who support the construction, operation, inspection, maintenance of property, and for the residential construction related to emergency repairs and projects that ensure structural integrity, plumbers, electricians, exterminators, and other service providers who provide services that are necessary to maintaining the safety, sanitation, and essential operation of construction sites and construction projects, and a couple other places. As you can see, this doesn't specifically call out property management and the numerous different tasks that are involved in managing a multifamily property every day. It does mean that critical property management functions can continue, such as accounting functions and other critical daily operations, emergency maintenance, those kinds of things. Water, heat, appliances. Someone once told me it's an emergency if there's fire, flood, or blood. So those are still emergencies. and your teams can still act on those emergencies. What we're reading into this, and we don't want to read too far into it though, is a strict reading of the order prohibits, general landscaping type activities, turns, so construction related to a turn of a unit. Your residents can move out, but we're running into some difficulty on whether or not you can engage in what we'd call construction related activities to turn that unit and prepare it for a new resident to move in. And other construction related activities, if you've driven to work, most construction, if not all construction, is suspended right now. There is an exception for publicly financed low income housing that's allowed to continue. But on the 28th of March, on Saturday, the Department of Homeland Security Cyber Information, DISA, I can't remember what it totally stands for, issued an advisory opinion that we are now using to work with the governor's office and asking them to specifically allow for property management and residential construction to continue. The advisory opinion marks essential the following employees: workers responsible for the leasing of residential properties to provide individuals and families with ready access to available housing, workers responsible for handling property management, maintenance, and related service calls who can coordinate the response to emergency at-home situations requiring immediate attention, as well as facilitate the reception for deliveries, mail, and other necessary services. And then workers performing housing construction related activities to ensure additional units can be made available to combat the nation's existing housing supply shortage. We know that your job as a property management professional is critical to maintaining housing for everyone during this crisis. And so we're working behind the scenes every day trying to get clarification on this. I actually had a phone call earlier today with the governor's team trying to, again, discuss these issues and to discuss rental assistance, which we'll get to in a little bit. So know that this isn't a final order and that we continue to work on this. We've sent a few letters to the governor's office asking for some specific things and have been really trying to work with them and hope that we can continue working with them to get answers to our questions and to get assistance to the folks that need it, because we're all looking for some assistance right now. What's ahead? Looking forward past the month of March, it's hard to believe that just 30 days ago, we were able to leave our homes and go to work. I was in Mexico 30 days ago, but life was normal then is not normal now. We will return to normal again. In the meantime, I think there's a lot of things that need to happen in order to return to normalcy. And that starts for us with residents paying their rent. So property managers and owners can pay their necessary expenses like employee salaries, the mortgage, insurance, security patrol, all of these things. What can we expect tomorrow and the rest of this month? That brings us to our next poll. What are you doing to assist your residents in paying their rent right now? The thing that folks are doing the most is directing residents to renter financial resources, which is super important. In a close second and third is providing payment plans and waiving late fees. We really believe that the first step in all of this is communication. Communicating with your residents in a compassionate way. Of course, not everyone is directly affected by COVID and the economic and financial consequences of this disease, but some are, and they're all likely trying to figure out how to make their expenses during this time, whether that's a car payment, food on the table, and of course, rent. Like us, they need support, likely more support to get through this crisis. We don't know when they might be able to get back to work or to find another job. So we're recommending that in your communication, you show compassion and a commitment to working with your residents to overcome this crisis. The more that we can work together, the better off we will all be in the future. So you should provide them with resources. There are a number of opportunities to work with your residents to assist them directly affected by COVID, and many of these opportunities revolve around the residents' ability to pay their rent now or at some point in the future. So what are some important resources that are available? Again, I'm going to point you to our website. As I mentioned earlier, you mouse over the resources page on our homepage. And click on rental assistance. You'll find a number of rental assistance programs, starting with federal resources right now. The first and most important are the federal stimulus dollars that were approved by Congress last week. Any American earning less than $99,000 a year is going to get an automatic check in a couple weeks, probably next week or the week after. And those earning less than $75,000 are going to receive an automatic flat $1,200. Those who've been laid off from their job should apply for unemployment insurance. And we have a link on our website to go directly to unemployment insurance. Under this emergency, they've waived the waiting week, so folks who have applied for unemployment insurance can actually begin receiving unemployment immediately and not have a waiting period week. Under the congressional acts of last week, each person receiving unemployment and directly affected by COVID will receive an additional $600. For those who are affected by COVID, either medically or they have family members that they're taking care of because of the disease, there are opportunities here in Washington that you can receive resources through paid sick leave, Washington Paid Sick Leave, and the Family Medical Leave Act as well may both be available to you for resources and to your residents. And we have links on our website for those too. Finally, on that resource page, you're going to see a number of community-based resources, mostly private nonprofits that have indicated that they have some rental assistance. Now, we haven't verified with every single provider that we've included on here that they have rental assistance available, but these are resources that we found on the internet in these different counties that have previously indicated they have rental assistance. This is our attempt to help in the 211 battle. We've heard that 211 can be a little bit of a phone tree, and we want to help folks get directly to the services they need so they're not spending so much time trying to find some rental assistance in this community. What else can you do? Like in our poll, we talked about waiving late fees, waiving month-to-month fees, waiving credit card processing fees for online payment, and payment plans. Certainly, we know that paying on a credit card is not necessarily the best thing that someone can do, but it ensures that they're actually paying the rent. And if that's the choice that they want to make and use a credit card to pay their rent now, we should be allowing that. And if we can reduce that burden just a little bit for this month or for the next couple months, that's a great opportunity. The other big piece is payment plan. And this is something that I think we're going to see a lot more of in the near future. We're going to probably see some regulatory action around payment plans. And so what we're looking for at WMFHA are, what are your best practices around payment plans right now? And how are you implementing payment plans at your communities? Some of the things that we think about when we're thinking about payment plans is, how do you communicate the payment plan option? You want to make sure that the payment plan options are going to the renters that are most affected and those that actually need a payment plan, not those that are trying to take advantage of the situation. You also want to make sure that they're providing some proof of a hardship right now. What is that hardship? They've been laid off from their job. Their hours have been reduced. They've had a second job and now they only have one job. They're having to take care of a family member and are unable to work. What is that requirement of proof of hardship? What can the resident pay now? As we mentioned, a lot of the federal resources are going to be paid directly to the resident, from the $1,200 stimulus check and unemployment to other sorts of things. What can the resident pay now? Do they have a small amount of savings or what are the future resources that might be available? And again, has the resident sought government assistance? You want to make sure that someone who's been laid off from work is accessing all of the assistance and the resources that are available to them under this crisis. And we know that unemployment insurance is available to everyone that's been laid off as a result of coronavirus. How will the resident be able to make the second, third, and additional payments? This is an important conversation to have with your residents that are asking for a payment plan. You want to make sure that you're not setting them up for failure down the road, and that we can make sure that we're setting everyone up for success. We know that 39% of Americans do not have $400 in cash set aside for an emergency. It doesn't mean that they don't have more than $400 for an emergency. It just means they don't have $400 in cash. About the same amount of the working population is currently unemployed because of coronavirus. Doing some of the things that we've talked about, waiving credit card fees to allow for electronic payment, allowing to go month to month without month-to-month fees, these things. The business community is stepping up and really trying to make sure that everyone is assisted in the ways that they can be right now at the most minimal cost for everyone. The final thing is, do not report a resident affected by coronavirus who can't pay their rent on time to a credit reporting agency. This is a new thing that many communities are doing. They're using credit reporting to help improve renters' credit score, but a missed rent payment can actually act as a negative credit mark on their credit score. We shouldn't be reporting negative credit marks during this time, especially for residents who have been affected by the coronavirus. And then finally, offer to extend the resident's rental agreement for an additional period of time at the same rate that they currently pay. This is a kind of a two-part issue. One, what if you've entered into a payment agreement with a resident and the payment agreement extends after their lease expires? What's going to happen there? The second is, what about the uncertainty about a resident might not know that in 2 months when their lease expires, they don't know what they're going to do because they might not have a job right now and they might not know where they need to move. Maybe they want to move someplace that might be cheaper, but most are probably going to want to understand or accept the comfort of their current place and try and remain there as long as they can. So think about and consider offering an additional period of time at the same rate that they currently are currently paying, so that one, you can complete that payment plan, but also you can keep folks housed and housed stably during this crisis when we've got so much uncertainty going around. All of this said, we've talked a lot about what the resident resources are. What about some resources for you as the property manager? First, if you're on the NAA Blue Moon lease forms, there is a payment plan template and a notice of temporary waiver of late fees form that are going to go live. Well, they're live on the website, and I think they will automatically pop up in your Blue Moon program or whatever program you use for lease generation tomorrow on April 1st. We've also got some member examples that have been shared with us. A letter to residents talks about opportunity to communicate. It's starting with communication and an opportunity to work with the residents who might be unable to pay. I think it's important as property managers and housing providers that we start that line of communication so residents know and they can feel comfortable coming to you to say, hey, listen, I'm in a position where I can't make my rent this month, but I want to try and figure out how. And then we have a template payment plan as well that was provided to us by one of our attorney members. Of course, we caution that using the documents that we might provide, that you always, before you serve those or use those on your own community, that you run those by your attorneys first. We've provided on the right-hand side of the screen here, the additional resources, Puckett and Redford, Cutting Law Offices, Loeffler Law Offices, Boyce Law Firm, and then Eastern Washington, Eric Stephen and Armitage and Thompson, as all really great resources for you to run information by them before you're giving it to their residents, especially if you're entering into a legal agreement for repayment of money or something like that. You want to make sure that that agreement would stand up in court if you needed to enforce that, but also that you're not giving away rights that you shouldn't be doing in that agreement. So we're always happy to provide these resources later as well if you need them, but we'll be providing them. I think Sloan's doing that through the chat box right now, and we'll be providing that afterward as well. We continue to work. Two other things that are popping up. A lot of local jurisdictions are deferring tax payments. So if you have local tax payments that you're making, they're deferring those for a couple months. And yesterday, the King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties deferred property tax payments until June 15th. I believe June 15th or June 30th. If you're directly making those property tax payments, this is an opportunity for you to hold that money in your reserves just in case something pops up with your residents that might be unable to pay rent. We also got an email today from NAA. You may have received this email as well. They advise being proactive. Reach out to your mortgage holder right now and ask what your options might be for a forbearance. Whether that's a private mortgage or a federally subsidized mortgage, you want to know what your options are. You want to be proactive. The worst thing that can happen is that you wait too long, then you're too far behind. You don't want to get behind. You want to be proactive about these issues. So if you know that your property might not make as much income this month and you're going to need some help, reach out and talk to the mortgage company or talk to some of your other providers and see if you can defer that payment for a month or two or enter into some kind of a payment plan yourself to make sure that you're staying clean with your debts as well. We continue to work with state and local leaders to address the rental assistance piece. Just today, in a prior phone call, we were talking about how we might be able to get some rental assistance from the state level. There's about $6 billion in the congressional act from last week that's allocated to all 50 states for different types of assistance that can be used both for property owners and for renters and folks who may be at risk of homelessness. So we're going to continue to follow that money and continue to work with state and local leaders to address the need for more rental assistance because we believe rental assistance is really going to be the key to helping everyone in this crisis. That brings us to our last poll, I believe, today, right, Sloan? Mm-hmm. Looks like we've got some 5+ year veterans on this call today, which is fantastic. But for all of those that know what it was like in 2008 and 2009, renting apartments and being a multifamily housing provider, you know it was difficult to maintain occupancy and maintain residents in your communities. So I ask, the question I always have is, what helps more? A resident who's trying to pay their rent and is compliant in an agreed payment plan, or a vacant home, which isn't bringing any income and is actually incurring additional costs because you're trying to rent that place with advertising and making it rent ready and those kinds of things. The more that we can do and the more that we can work with our residents to keep them in their housing during this time, the better off we are going to be in the long run. The more that we can do voluntarily as an industry, the more that we can help those affected by COVID. I'm going to say this again, now is not the time to look for loopholes in the law, to look for caveats and ways around. Yesterday, Attorney General Bob Ferguson made a mention in a public statement that he's getting tons of calls about landlords trying to skirt the rules. We don't want to skirt the rules now or ever. We want to make sure that we're trying to help, we're being of assistance, and that we're doing everything that we can to help our community during this crisis so that we come out stronger than before and we show how professional the property management world is, the housing provider world, and we can continue to lead by example and not be hurt by more regulation. I think the more that we can do voluntarily and help out, the better off we're going to be in the long run. That's what I've got for today, Sloan. I'm happy to do question and answer. If we've got some more questions, we can have.
And then I just popped the link over there to go ahead and register for Thursday's 6 Feet Apart series. Brett's got some information up for you right there. Really great. Our friends at Conversion Logics are just sharing some generic market data, not specific to their platform, but just in specific to the way residents or potential residents are behaving right now, what marketing channels are performing the best. So we felt like this is great information to get into your hands right now. So we have a question on the chat room. What do you think is a reasonable repayment plan length?
I think it depends. Typical attorney answer, I know, but I think it depends. You have to look at what resources are available for the resident. You have to look at how many months behind in rent they are and what the likely ability is for them to make that payment in months 2, 3, and 4, or 5 and 6. So right now, we have a state law that permits a payment plan of up to 90 days for unpaid rent in an eviction action. I would start there. I would start with 90 days and see if 90 days is going to allow that person to become current. But one of the things that you need to consider is you want to make sure that when May 1st comes around, that you're not entering into a second 90-day payment agreement for that resident to pay May's rent as well. We want to make sure that this is comprehensive and hopefully one time so that they aren't experiencing these problems month after month. The last thing that we want is to just cycle people back in and out of payment plans. We want to get folks back on their footing so that you as property managers and housing providers really have the ability to get back on your feet and have some predictability and make sure that the rent continues to get paid on April 1st.
Thank you, Brett, for that. What documentation can we ask for proof of hardship? Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll take both questions at the same time. There's a what documentation can
and what can you not ask for? Yeah.
So the types of things that you can ask for: a letter from an employer acknowledging that they've been laid off or they've had reduced hours, things like that. Copies of paychecks that show lower or no income, applications for unemployment benefits, those kinds of things. The things you cannot ask for, these are going to be the same things that you can't ask for in a reasonable accommodation. Never ask for any medical information. There's going to be some information that you're going to be able to derive from a person who is affected by COVID, or they're going to have a doctor's note that says they can't go to work, right? Or you may already know that they have been exposed to coronavirus because they've told you that they've been exposed and tested positive. But you can't ask for the specific diagnosis. You can't ask for specific medical information. You can ask for general medical information. Maybe that's a letter from the doctor that says, this person, I treat this person, and they are not capable of working right now. It's very similar information to what you're going to use for your reasonable accommodation requests, and you should kind of follow the reasonable accommodation request method in order to understand any request for payment plan. Make sure it's an interactive process, you're engaging with the resident, and if you need more information, always follow up in writing to make sure that you're covering all your bases.
Thank you again on behalf of the WMFHA team for letting us serve you. Thank you for joining this webinar. We hope to see some of you on Thursday for our Market Trends Amid COVID-19 webinar, 6 Feet Apart webinar. I want to thank Brett. Wow. You can count on Brett for something funny at the end. So yes, go wash your hands, everyone. Thank you so much.